In the spring of 1976, 15 children climbed aboard a yellow school bus in Chowchilla, California, bound for a field trip to a summer camp near Silver Creek. They were bright-eyed, chattering, their backpacks stuffed with snacks and dreams of a weekend by the lake. The bus pulled away from Silver Creek Elementary under a clear sky, its engine humming a promise of adventure. But they never arrived. No crash, no wreckage, no trace. The children, their driver, and a substitute teacher vanished into the warm California air, leaving behind a town that would never be the same. 12 years later, in 1988, a forgotten bus is unearthed deep in the woods of Silver Creek, and with it, a survivor whose fractured memories unravel a truth so dark it threatens to swallow Chowchilla whole. The fog had settled over Chowchilla, like a shroud, thick and unyielding, cloaking the almond orchards and muffling the hum of irrigation pumps. It was the kind of fog that made the world feel smaller, as if the town had been severed from the rest of California, adrift in a grey limbo. Sounds twisted in the haze. Car tires on asphalt became whispers. Distant dogs barking became something, closer to cries. You could walk the cracked sidewalks of your childhood and feel like a stranger, the familiar swallowed by the mist. Memories in Chowchilla had a way of slipping away like that, quiet and unresisting, as if they'd never been there at all. Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley was halfway through her first coffee of the day when the call came. It was just past dawn. On May 5th, 1988, the sky still bruised with the last shadows of night. Her small house on the edge of town smelled of burnt toast and motor oil, the radio crackling faintly in the kitchen. Possible discovery out by Silver Creek, the dispatcher said, her voice sharp with urgency. Construction crew hit something big. They think it's a school bus. Plates match a case from '76. Clara froze, the mug scalding her palm. She didn't need to ask which case. Every soul in Chowchilla knew it by heart. 15 kids, one driver, one substitute teacher, gone without a trace on May 19th, 1976. They were students from Silver Creek Elementary, her school, her grade, her classmates. She'd been grounded. That day, caught sneaking out to the creek with her cousin, her punishment a twist of fate that spared her. For 12 years, that choice had lingered like a splinter under her skin, a quiet guilt she could neither name nor shake. She set the coffee down, untouched, grabbed her keys, and left the house without locking the door, the fog swallowing her footsteps as she stepped into the morning. The drive to Silver Creek was a descent into memory, each mile a thread pulling her back to 1976. The fog pressed against her windshield, blurring the outlines of almond trees, their branches skeletal in the haze. The road wound past abandoned barns, their paint peeling like old skin, and irrigation ditches choked with weeds. Chowchilla was a small town, the kind where everyone knew your name, but not your secrets, and the disappearance had carved a wound that never fully healed. Clara passed the old feed store. Its sign faded to illegibility and turned onto the narrow service road that led to the Silver Creek camp. She remembered the kids' excitement that spring, the last field trip before summer break, a chance to escape the classroom for 2 days of campfires and lake water. The camp was new then, built by volunteers, pine cabins, a fire pit, a dock that jutted out over the creek's glassy surface. She could still see the yearbook photos, kids waving from the bus windows, Walkmans dangling from their necks, cartoon lunchboxes swinging, disposable cameras flashing. She remembered their names, their laughter, the way they'd raced across the school parking lot to board the bus. When she arrived at the dig site, the construction crew had cordoned off a muddy clearing deep in the woods. The bus emerged from the earth like a relic from a forgotten war, its yellow paint dulled to a sickly grey, cracked and caked with decades of dirt. A backhoe stood frozen beside it, its claw hovering like a predator caught mid-strike, as if afraid to disturb what it had uncovered. The air was heavy with the scent of wet soil and something sharper, something that made Clara's stomach twist. "Sheriff Hensley," the site foreman greeted, his hard hat tucked under his arm. His face was pale, his eyes darting to the bus and back to her. "We stopped everything when we saw what it was. You'll want to take a look." Clara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The crew had cleared enough earth to expose the emergency exit door, its red paint chipped but still vivid against the mud. The air carried a sour, earthy stench, like a grave left untouched too long. She stepped closer, her boots sinking into the soft ground, the fog curling around her ankles like a warning. Inside, the bus was a tomb of decay. Mold clung to the vinyl seats, some still buckled with frayed seatbelts, their metal clasps rusted shut. A lunchbox, faded pink with a cartoon pony, lay tipped under the third row, half buried in silt. A single child's shoe, its laces threaded with moss, rested on the back step, as if its owner had simply stepped out and never returned. But there were no bodies, no bones, just absence. That emptiness was worse than any wreckage. A missing bus was a mystery. A missing bus with no passengers was a void, a question mark carved into the earth. Clara climbed inside, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghosts. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of years, pressing against her skin. The floor creaked under her boots, warped from moisture and time. At the driver's seat, she found it, a class list, taped to the dashboard, its edges curling like dried leaves, but the ink still legible. Miss Delaney's looping, cheerful handwriting listed 15 names, ages 9 to 11. Clara knew them all. Nora Kelly, Kimmy Leong, Caleb Ruiz, Marcy Tate, Sam Carter, and 10 others, their faces burned into her memory. At the bottom of the list, in a different hand, jagged, scrawled in red marker, were the words, "We never made it to Silver Creek." The sentence hit her like a blow. She stumbled back, the cold air sharper now, slicing through the haze. A crow screamed from the pines, its cry more warning than song, echoing in the stillness. She stepped out of the bus, her hands trembling, and turned to the foreman. Her voice was flat, controlled, but it took effort. "Seal this off. No one touches it until the state team arrives." "Yes, ma'am," he said, already motioning. To his crew, his face tight with unease. Clara looked back at the bus, half buried, framed by the silent pines and the creeping fog. The kids were supposed to be gone for 2 days. A quick trip, a summer memory to carry into the long California sun. Instead, they vanished. And Chowchilla had buried its grief under layers of routine, pretending the wound wasn't there. But now, 12 years later, the bus was back, its message a scream in the silence. Someone had lingered long enough to write those words. Someone wanted them found. Back at the Chowchilla Sheriff's Station, Clara's hands still carried the grit of the bus, a fine layer of dust she couldn't shake. The station was a squat brick building, its walls lined with faded wanted posters and community notices curling at the edges. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting harsh shadows across her desk. She opened the case file from 1976, its pages, yellowed but intact, preserved like a relic in the Chowchilla Records office. The file was heavy with the weight of a town's unresolved sorrow. Photos of smiling kids, Xeroxed rosters, a list of packed items, backpacks, juice boxes, a few, disposable cameras, a Walkman with a cracked case. At the bottom, a report stamped in red ink, "Missing persons, presumed lost, no evidence of foul play." That stamp had haunted Chowchilla for 12 years. No evidence, no leads, no closure. The town had moved on, or so it claimed, but the disappearance lingered in the spaces between words, in the glances exchanged at the diner, in the prayers whispered at Sunday services. Clara had always felt there was more, something the official report missed, something the town didn't want to see. She flipped to the driver's profile. Carl Davis, 38, part-time hire, no family, no criminal record. He'd been new to Chowchilla, a drifter who took the job last minute. He'd vanished with the kids, supposedly skipped town. No one had looked too hard for him, assuming he'd been a victim too. But Clara wasn't so sure anymore. Then there was the substitute teacher, M. Atwell, who'd filled in for Miss Delaney, the regular teacher, who'd been out with the flu. Atwell's file was thin, a single page with a name, an address that led to a vacant lot on the edge of town, and no photo. No one remembered hiring her, and no one had seen her since the bus left. Clara's fingers lingered on the page, her mind turning over the details. A driver no one knew well, a teacher no one could trace, and 15 kids who never came back. Her eyes drifted to a photo in the file, the class of '76, taken weeks before the trip. 15 faces, frozen in time, their smiles unaware of what was coming. Clara's finger traced one face in particular. Nora Kelly, with her wide green eyes, a missing front tooth, and a pink ribbon tied in her dark hair. Nora had lived 3 doors down from Clara, in a small house with a sagging porch. They'd traded comic books, raced bikes down dirt roads, shared secrets under the almond trees. The memory hit her like a wave, sharp and sudden, her chest tightening. She closed the file and stood, the room too small, the air too thick. The past wasn't just stirring, it was clawing its way out, demanding to be seen. Clara drove to the old Avery barn that night, a place she'd passed 1,000 times but never thought twice about. It sat on the outskirts of Chowchilla, its boards warped, its roof half collapsed under the weight of neglect. It had belonged to Frank Avery, a recluse who died in '85, his name barely a footnote in town records. His son, Martin Avery, was a ghost, no known address, no records after '76. The barn loomed in the moonlight, its silhouette jagged against the stars, the fog curling around its base like a living thing. Clara's flashlight swept the ground, catching a glint near the foundation. She crouched, her breath catching as she pulled a small bracelet from the weeds, plastic, faded purple, etched with a name in blocky, childlike handwriting, K-I-M-I. Kimmy Leong, 10 years old in '76, a quiet girl who loved drawing dinosaurs, always scribbling her name on her notebooks, her shoes, her lunchbox. Clara's hand closed around the bracelet, her pulse thundering. The barn seemed to lean closer, its shadows deepening, as if it knew what she'd found. She stepped toward the barn's sagging door, her boots crunching on gravel. The air was colder here, heavier, carrying the faint scent of mildew and something metallic. She pushed the door open, its hinges screaming in protest. Inside, the darkness was absolute, her flashlight beam a thin blade against it. The walls were lined with rotting planks, the floor littered with broken tools and old feed sacks. But something caught her eye. A scrap of paper, half buried under a pile of debris. She knelt and pulled it free. A drawing, crude but deliberate, of a bus surrounded by trees. A single word scrawled beneath it. Gone. Clara's breath hitched. The drawing wasn't recent, its edges frayed, the paper brittle, but it was a child's work, unmistakably Kimmy's style. Those careful, precise lines she'd always drawn in class. Clara slipped the drawing into an evidence bag, her hands unsteady. The barn wasn't just a relic, it was a witness, holding secrets the town had buried. She stepped back outside, the fog thicker now, swallowing the stars. The bracelet burned. In her pocket, Kimmy's name a whisper she couldn't ignore. Back at the station, Clara spread the case file across her desk, the bracelet and drawing beside it. The overhead lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across Kimmy Leong's face in the class photo. Glasses, shy grin, a dinosaur sticker on her backpack. Clara remembered her drawings, taped to the classroom walls, bright with colour and imagination. Now her bracelet was here, her drawing was here, but where was she? Clara picked up the phone and dialed the California Missing Persons Unit, leaving a detailed message requesting everything they had on Martin Avery and any properties tied to his name. She didn't expect an answer until morning, but sleep was out of the question. The past was awake, and it was screaming. By sunrise, The Silver Creek dig site was a hive of quiet urgency. State forensic teams had arrived, their white vans parked in a tight semicircle around the bus. The fog had lifted, revealing a sky heavy with clouds, the air sharp with the promise of rain. Clara stood at the edge of the clearing, arms folded, watching as techs in hazmat suits catalogued every inch of the bus's hollowed shell. They moved with precision, bagging dirt samples, photographing the seats, dusting for prints that likely didn't exist anymore. Clara had barely slept, her mind too loud with memory and unease. Kimmy's bracelet a weight in her jacket pocket. "Sheriff," one of the techs called, a woman in her late 30s with a clipped voice and square glasses. She held up a sealed evidence sleeve, her expression unreadable. "We found something you'll want to see." Clara crossed the muddy ground, her boots sinking with each step. The tech handed her the sleeve. Inside was a photograph, color but faded, its edges curling slightly, but not as aged as it should have been for 12 years underground. Clara frowned, turning it over in her hands. Where was this? Wedged behind the metal paneling above, the back left window, the tech said. Looked like it was placed there recently, honestly. Clara studied the photo. It showed 8 or 9 children standing in front of a low wooden building, a barn or lodge, its siding weathered, its windows boarded shut. Their expressions were wrong, not frightened or happy, just blank, like they'd forgotten how to feel. A few faces were unmistakable. Nora Kelly, her green eyes wide but vacant. Kimmy Leong, clutching a notebook. Caleb Ruiz, his shoulders hunched. Behind them, in the shadows of the doorway, stood a man, tall, bearded, his face half hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. Clara flipped the photo over, scrawled on the back in black ink, "The Chosen, Year 2. No date, no location, just those words, sharp and deliberate. Her stomach dropped. Year 2. The phrase implied a timeline, a plan, something that stretched beyond a single day's disappearance. She slipped the photo into her jacket, her mind racing. The bus wasn't just a relic. It was a message, a piece of a puzzle that had been buried for 12 years. And someone, or something, had wanted it to stay hidden. Clara drove back to the station, the photo burning a hole in her pocket. The fog had returned, thicker now, curling through the streets of Chowchilla like a living thing. She spread the case file across her desk again, adding the photo to her collection of fragments. The bracelet, the drawing, the class list with its chilling message. She opened a county map and began cross-referencing properties tied to the Avery. Name, abandoned buildings, and old religious sites in the area. One stood out, Willow Grove Camp, a former youth retreat purchased in 1974 by a private trust, its records scrubbed clean. It sat at the edge of the San Joaquin Valley, 20 miles from the dig site, untouched since the late 70s. Clara circled it in red ink, her pulse quickening. She didn't know what she'd find there, but she knew it was where the trail led next. The fog outside her window seemed to pulse, as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover what it had kept hidden for 12 years. Clara stood, grabbing her flashlight and keys. The past wasn't just calling. It was demanding answers, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what they'd reveal. The fog clung to Chowchilla like a second skin, its grey tendrils curling through the streets, muffling the world beyond the sheriff's station. It was May 5th, 1988, the day the buried bus had clawed its way back into the light, and Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley felt the weight of 12 years pressing against her chest. The discovery at Silver Creek had cracked open a wound the town had tried to forget. 15 children, a driver, and a substitute teacher vanished without a trace in 1976. The bus, unearthed by a construction crew, held no bodies, only relics, a pink lunchbox, a moss-laced shoe, and a class list with a chilling message, scrawled in red. We never made it to Silver Creek. Clara had spent the night poring over the case file, her desk littered with fragments of the past. A child's bracelet etched with KIMI, a crude drawing, of a bus labelled Gone, and a faded photo of blank-faced children, captioned The Chosen, Year 2. Each clue was a whisper from 1976, demanding answers she didn't have. But the call that came just before dusk changed everything. A survivor had been found, and her name was Nora Kelly. Clara drove to Chowchilla General Hospital, her truck's headlights cutting through the fog like knives. The air was heavy, the kind of stillness that made every sound, a distant dog's bark, the crunch of gravel under tires, feel like a warning. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, the bracelet in her pocket a constant reminder of Kimmy Leong, one of the 15. The photo from the bus, showing children in front of a boarded-up building, burned in her mind. Year 2. The words suggested a plan, a purpose, something that stretched beyond a single day's disappearance. And now, a survivor. Clara's pulse raced as she pulled into the hospital lot, the neon sign flickering against the mist. The nurse met her outside the exam room, her face drawn, her clipboard clutched like a shield. "She's stable, mid-20s, no ID," the nurse said, her voice low. "She's dehydrated, malnourished and disoriented, but she's awake. Keeps insisting she's 12 years old. We thought it was trauma until she gave us her name." She handed Clara the clipboard. In shaky, uneven handwriting, one name stood out: Nora Kelly. Clara's knees buckled, her hand bracing against the wall. Nora Kelly, green-eyed, pink-ribboned Nora, who'd lived 3 doors down, who'd traded comic books and raced bikes with Clara in the summer of '76. The girl who'd boarded the bus for the Silver Creek camp and never came back. Clara's breath caught, the clipboard trembling in her hands. "She mentioned a field trip," the nurse added softly. "Says she's been trying to get home ever since." Clara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She pushed open the exam room door, the fluorescent lights harsh against the pale walls. The woman on the bed sat upright, her hair a tangled mess of dark strands, her face gaunt and shadowed. Her clothes were tattered, mismatched, like scraps pieced together from a forgotten life. But her eyes, those wide green eyes, were unmistakable, locked on Clara with a mix of fear and recognition. Clara stopped at the foot of the bed, her voice barely a whisper. "Nora." The woman blinked, tears welling. "You got old," she said, her voice cracking, a single tear sliding down her cheek. The words were childlike, as if time had stopped, for her the moment the bus left Silver Creek Elementary. Clara's throat closed. She stepped closer, her boots soft on the linoleum. You remember me?" Nora nodded, her hands clutching the thin hospital blanket, her knuckles white. "You were grounded. You were supposed to come with us." Her voice trembled, caught between memory and disbelief. Clara sank into the chair beside the bed, her mind reeling. 12 years had aged Nora's body. She looked like a woman in her mid-20s, but her words, her gaze, were those of a 12-year-old girl, frozen in the spring of '76. Time had fractured her, leaving her stranded between then and now. "They told me no one would remember," Nora whispered, her eyes drifting to the window, where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. "That no one would come looking." "Who told you that?" Clara asked, leaning closer, her voice gentle but urgent. Nora's gaze snapped back, her pupils wide. "We never made it to Silver Creek," she said, her voice hollow, the words echoing the red scrawl on the class list. Clara's stomach twisted. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the yearbook photo, the one she'd carried since the night before, its edges worn from her touch. She slid it across the tray table. Nora's breath hitched as she picked it up, her fingers trembling. "That's me," she whispered, tracing her own face, gap-toothed, ribboned, smiling. "And Caleb, Marcy, Kimmy." Her voice broke, tears spilling as she clutched the photo to her chest. "You kept this?" "I never stopped," Clara said, her own eyes burning. She'd kept the photo, the names, the memories, even as Chowchilla tried to forget. "Nora, What happened? Where have you been? Nora's shoulders shook, her voice barely audible. I don't know. It's all pieces. The bus, the driver. He wasn't our usual guy. He didn't talk much. And there was someone else, a man, waiting at the fork in Road 132, just past the orchards. He got on the bus. Clara's pulse quickened. What did he look like? Nora's brow furrowed, her eyes distant. I don't know. Maybe a beard. It's blurry. I just remember. What he said? The creek's not ready for you yet. You'll have to wait. Then, nothing. I woke up somewhere else. A barn, but not a barn. The windows were covered with boards. The clocks were wrong. Wrong how? Clara asked, her notepad open, pen poised. They always said it was Tuesday, Nora whispered, even when it wasn't. They made us use new names, said our old ones were gone, that the world didn't want us anymore. Clara's hand stilled, the pen hovering. Who's they? Nora swallowed hard, her fingers twisting the blanket. Two of them at first, a woman and a man. She called him Mr. Avery. I don't know if that was his real name. She left after a while. I think she was sick. He stayed. There were others later, but he was always there. Do you know where the barn was? Clara pressed, her voice steady despite the chill creeping up her spine. Nora shook her head, her eyes filling again. They moved us in vans. We couldn't. Look outside. They said the world forgot us, that it was better this way. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Some of the others, they forgot too. They forgot school, home, their families. But I didn't. I couldn't. Clara's chest ached. She thought of Kimmy's bracelet, the drawing in the Avery barn, the photo from the bus. The others, are they still out there? Nora's gaze drifted to the ceiling, her voice faint. Some are, I feel it, but they don't want to be found. Clara stayed another hour, coaxing fragments from Nora's fractured memory. The doctors had run initial tests. No major injuries, just dehydration, malnutrition, and signs of prolonged stress. Her DNA was being processed, but Clara didn't need a test to know it was Nora. Those eyes, that voice, they were proof enough. She left the hospital as night fell, the fog thicker now, swallowing the streetlights. Nora's words echoed in her mind. They said the world forgot us. But Clara hadn't forgotten, and neither had the bus, buried like a secret the earth couldn't keep. Back at the station, Clara cleared her whiteboard and began anew. At the top she wrote, Silver Creek Field Trip, May 19th, 1976. Below, she listed the 15 names, circling Nora Kelly in red. Next to it, she added, Found May 5th, 1988, near Silver Creek site. Appears to have aged normally, believes she's 12. No memory of events after bus left school. Repeats, We never made it to Silver Creek. She pinned the photo from the bus to the board, the blank faces of the children staring. Back, the shadowed man in the doorway a silent threat. The Chosen, Year 2. The phrase gnawed at her, implying a system, a purpose, something that had endured beyond the day the bus vanished. Clara's desk was a map of the past, the case file, Kimmy's bracelet, the drawing from the Avery barn, the class list with its red scrawl. She opened the county map again, her finger tracing the circle around Willow Grove Camp, the abandoned youth retreat 20 miles from the dig site. It was a lead, thin but undeniable. Martin Avery's name lingered. In her mind, a ghost tied to the barn, the bus, and now Nora's story. She dialed the California Missing Persons Unit again, leaving another message, this time requesting records on Willow Grove and any missing persons cases linked to the Avery family. The station was quiet, the only sound the hum of the heater and the faint drip of a leak in the corner. Clara didn't notice the fog pressing against the windows, its grey fingers curling like a warning. She drove to the Avery barn again that night, unable to stay away. The moon was hidden, the fog, living thing that swallowed her truck's headlights. The barn loomed larger in the dark, its boards warped, its roof sagging like a broken spine. Clara's flashlight swept the ground, searching for anything she'd missed. The bracelet had been a fluke, a glint in the weeds, but the drawing inside had been deliberate, Kimmy's hand leaving a mark the years couldn't erase. Clara pushed the barn door open, its hinges screaming, and stepped inside. The air was colder, heavier, carrying the scent of mildew and something metallic, like old blood. Her beam caught something new, a scrap of fabric, caught on a nail near the back wall. She pulled it free, a strip of cloth, faded blue, embroidered, with a small star. Clara's breath caught. She remembered Marcy Tate, one of the 15, always wearing a blue headband with a star stitched by her mother. Marcy had been loud, fearless, the kind of girl who'd climb the tallest tree and dare you to follow. Clara slipped the fabric into an evidence bag, her hands unsteady. The barn wasn't just a witness, it was a vault, holding pieces of the children it had swallowed. She moved deeper, her flashlight sweeping the walls. In the corner, half hidden by a pile of rotting sacks, was a trapdoor, its edges rusted but intact. Clara's pulse thundered. She knelt, prying it open with her knife. The hinges groaned, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. The air below was stale, tinged with earth and decay. She hesitated, her hand on her radio, but didn't call for backup. Not yet. This was hers to face. The ladder creaked under her weight, each step a plunge into the unknown. At the bottom, she found a small chamber, its walls lined with concrete, its floor littered with debris, broken glass, a rusted spoon, a child's sock. But what stopped her cold was the wall opposite the ladder, covered in scratches, shallow and frantic, as if carved with fingernails. Names, dates, fragments of pleas. Kimmy, 1977. Marcy, don't forget. Caleb, I'm sorry, we're still here. Clara's flashlight trembled, the beam dancing across the words. The chamber wasn't a storage room. It was a prison, a place where children had fought to be remembered. She climbed back to the surface, her breath ragged, the evidence bags heavy in her pockets. The fog had thickened, the barn barely visible as she stumbled to her truck. She drove back to the station, the names on the wall burning in her mind. Kimmy, Marcy, Caleb. They hadn't forgotten, even as the world tried to. Clara spread the new evidence across her desk. The fabric, photos of the trapdoor, sketches of the scratched names. She added them to the whiteboard, connecting them to Nora's story, the bus, the Avery barn. The puzzle was growing, but the picture it formed was darker than she'd imagined. By dawn, the forensic team at Silver Creek called with another find. They'd uncovered a metal box beneath the bus's rear floor panel, rusted but sealed. Inside was a single cassette tape, its label faded but legible, for the ones who remember. Clara's heart raced. She requested the tape be sent to the station for analysis, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. The fog outside was thinning, but the weight of the past was heavier than ever. Nora was alive. Kimmy's bracelet was real. Marcy's headband was here. But where were the others? And who was the bearded man in the photo, watching from the shadows? Clara stood at her whiteboard, the names staring back, each one a promise she couldn't break. The tape was on its way, the trapdoor was being processed, and Willow Grove Camp loomed on the horizon. She didn't know what she'd find, but she knew she couldn't stop. The children of 1976 were calling, and Chowchilla's secrets were running out of places to hide. The fog that blanketed Chowchilla had begun to lift by the morning of May 6, 1988, but the air remained heavy, charged with the weight of secrets unearthed. Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley stood at the edge of the Silver Creek dig site, her boots sinking into the mud, her eyes fixed on the yellow school bus that had clawed its way out of the earth. 12 years ago, in 1976, 15 children from Silver Creek Elementary had boarded that bus for a field trip to a summer camp and vanished, without a trace. Now, the bus was back, its hollow shell a silent witness to a mystery that refused to stay buried. Inside, Clara had found a class list with a chilling message scrawled in red. We never made it to Silver Creek. A faded photo, captioned, The Chosen. Year 2, showed blank-faced children in front of a boarded-up building, watched by a shadowy man. A survivor, Nora Kelly, had been found near the site. Her memories fractured, but haunting, speaking of a barn with wrong clocks and a man called Mr. Avery. Clara's desk at the station was a map of fragments. Kimmy Leong's bracelet, Marcy, Tate's headband, a child's drawing labelled Gone, and a trapdoor in the Avery barn, its walls scratched with names and pleas. Each clue was a scream from the past, and now a cassette tape labelled, For the Ones Who Remember, had been found beneath the bus, promising answers, or more questions. Clara's breath misted in the morning chill as she watched the forensic team work. The dig site was a hive of quiet precision, white-suited techs cataloguing every inch of the bus's decayed interior. The fog had retreated, revealing a sky heavy with clouds, the pines around the clearing standing like sentinels. Clara's hands were still gritty from the Avery barn, where she'd found the trapdoor and its concrete chamber, its walls carved with desperate messages. Kimmy, 1977. Marcy, don't forget. Caleb, I'm sorry. We're still here. The names echoed Nora's story of a place where children were stripped of their identities, forced to use new names, told the world had forgotten them. Clara's pocket held the evidence bags, Kimmy's bracelet, Marcy's headband, the drawing, and her mind held the image of the photo, those blank faces and the bearded man in the shadows. Year 2. The phrase suggested a system, a plan that stretched beyond the day the bus vanished, and it chilled her more than the fog ever could. Sheriff, a tech called, breaking her thoughts. It was the woman from yesterday, her square glasses, glinting as she held up another evidence sleeve. We found this in the bus's ceiling panel, tucked behind a loose rivet. Clara crossed the muddy ground, her pulse quickening. The sleeve contained a small notebook, its cover leather-bound but worn, its pages yellowed but intact. She opened it carefully, her gloved fingers trembling. The first page was filled with tight, precise handwriting, a list of dates and names, not the children's real names, but strange biblical ones. Dove, glory, silence, obedience. Beside each was a note. Dove, compliant, year 1. Glory, resistant, disciplined, year 2. Silence, observant, trusted, year 3. Clara's stomach twisted as she recognized the pattern. The names matched the children in the photo. Nora was Dove, Kimmy was silence. The notebook was a record, a ledger of control, tracking their transformation over years. She flipped to the last page, where a single sentence was scrawled in a different hand, shaky and urgent. The garden waits for those who forget. Clara slipped the notebook into an evidence bag, her mind racing. The garden. The word felt like a threat, a place where memories were buried deeper than the bus. She handed the bag to the tech. Get this to the lab. I want prints, ink analysis, everything. The tech nodded, her face grim. We're pulling more from the bus, but it's slow, the decay's bad. Clara's eyes drifted back to the bus, its yellow frame stark against the mud. Keep looking, she said. They left something for us to find. Back at the station, Clara added the notebook to her growing collection of evidence. The whiteboard was crowded now, a web of names and connections. Nora Kelly, found 1988, survivor. Kimmy Leong, bracelet and drawing, status unknown. Marcy Tate, headband, status unknown. Caleb Ruiz, name on wall, status unknown. She pinned the notebook's first page to the board, circling the garden in red. Nora's story of the barn, the wrong clocks, and Mr. Avery pointed to a cult-like operation, and the notebook confirmed it. A system designed to erase identities and enforce obedience. But why? And where was the garden? Clara's phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet station. It was the hospital. Nora was awake, more lucid, asking for her. Clara grabbed her jacket and drove through the thinning fog, her mind turning over the notebook's words. Silence, observant, trusted. Kimmy had been trusted, perhaps enough to leave the drawing, the bracelet, the messages on the wall. Clara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Kimmy might still be out there, holding on to her name like Nora had. At the hospital, Nora sat upright in her private room, the blinds drawn against the morning light. Her face was less gaunt, but her green eyes were haunted, flicking to the door as Clara entered. "You came back," Nora said, her voice small but steadier. "I said I would," Clara replied, pulling a chair close. She set the yearbook photo on the tray table, Nora's fingers brushing it instinctively. "Can we talk about the barn again?" Nora nodded, her hands twisting the blanket. "It's clearer now. The barn had a dirt floor, wooden walls, but there was a room below. Cold, hard. They took us there sometimes to think." Clara's pulse quickened, thinking of the trapdoor. "The concrete room?" Nora's eyes widened. "You found it?" "I did," Clara said gently. "There were names on the walls. Kimmy, Marcy, Caleb. They wrote they were still there." Nora's breath hitched, tears welling. "Kimmy, she was always writing." She said it kept her real. They didn't like it, but she never stopped. "Who didn't like it?" Clara asked. "Mr. Avery," Nora whispered. "And the others. There was a woman at first, thin, with a sharp voice. She called herself Sister Ruth, but I don't think that was her name. She left after the first year. Then there was a man. They called him Father Elijah. He wasn't a priest, but he liked the title. He scared us more than Mr. Avery." Clara leaned forward. "What did Father Elijah look like?" Nora's brow furrowed. "Tall, thin, with a beard. He wore a hat, always. His eyes, they didn't blink enough." Her voice dropped. "He's the one who said the creek wasn't ready. He got on the bus." Clara's blood ran cold. The man in the photo, half hidden in the doorway, matched Nora's description. What did he do? "He watched us," Nora said, her voice trembling. "He'd sit in the barn, staring, writing in a little book. He said we were being made new, that the world was poison, and we were the cure. But Kimmy, she didn't believe him. She'd whisper our real names at night, make us repeat them." Clara pulled the photo from the bus from her jacket, the one labelled The Chosen, Year 2. She slid it across the tray. "Is this him?" Nora gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's the barn," she whispered, her finger tracing the boarded windows. "And that's him." She pointed to the bearded man in the doorway, her hand shaking. "That's Father Elijah." Clara's mind raced. The photo was recent, its colours too vivid for 12 years underground. Someone had placed it in the bus, perhaps after it was buried, a message or a taunt. "Nora, do you remember anything about a place called the Garden?" Nora's face paled, her breath catching. "They talked about it sometimes, when they thought we weren't listening. A place for the ones who forgot everything. They said it was quiet, cold, where you went to be finished." "Finished?" Clara pressed. Nora's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. They took Marcy there once, after she tried to run. She came back different. She stopped talking." Clara's stomach twisted. Marcy Tate, the fearless girl, with the star-stitched headband, broken in a place called the Garden. She reached for Nora's hand. "You're safe now. We're going to find them." Nora nodded, but her eyes were distant. "Some don't want to be found," she whispered. "They think it's home." Clara left the hospital as noon approached, the sky grey and heavy. She drove to the station, Nora's words echoing. The Garden waits for those who forget. The cassette tape had arrived, sealed in an evidence bag, its label haunting, for the ones who remember. Clara requested a tech to set up the station's old tape player, her hands unsteady as she handed it over. The station was quiet, the other, deputies out on calls, leaving her alone with the past. The tech, a young man with nervous hands, loaded the tape. "It's fragile," he warned. "Might only play once." Clara nodded, her eyes fixed on the player. The tape hissed, static crackling, then a voice, small, hesitant, unmistakably a child's. "This is Kimmy, I think. It's dark. I don't know how long I've been here, but I remember school. I remember my mum's laugh." Clara's breath caught, her hand gripping the desk. Kimmy Leong's voice, alive on the tape, trembling but defiant. "They don't let us say our names," Kimmy continued. "They say it's how the world finds you, but I write them anyway, even if it's just in my head. Nora, Caleb, Marcy, Sam. We're still here. If anyone finds this, don't believe them when they say we ran away. We didn't. We were taken." A pause, then softer. "I'm not gone. Not yet." The tape clicked, the static fading. Clara sat frozen, her pulse racing. Kimmy's voice was a lifeline, proof she'd fought to be remembered. Clara rewound the tape, but the tech shook his head. It's too brittle. We're lucky it played, at all. Clara nodded, her mind already moving. She added Kimmy's tape to the whiteboard, connecting it to the bracelet, the drawing, the trapdoor's scratched names. The notebook's list. Silence, observant, trusted, made sense now. Kimmy had been trusted, allowed to write, but she'd used it to resist, leaving messages for someone to find. Clara's eyes drifted to the map, the red circle around Willow Grove Camp. Nora's mention of a river, a whistle at dusk, matched the camp's location near a bend in the San Joaquin, where a logging train once ran. It was time to go there. That afternoon, Clara drove to Willow Grove, the fog returning as she left Chowchilla's limits. The road narrowed to gravel, the almond orchards giving way to dense pines, their branches closing overhead. Her truck rattled over ruts, the map open. On the passenger seat, Willow Grove Camp had been a youth retreat in the 70s, purchased by a private trust, its records scrubbed after it closed. Clara's flashlight rested beside her, Kimmy's bracelet in her pocket, a silent promise. The camp appeared suddenly, a clearing in the woods, its cabins sagging, their roofs caved in. The main lodge loomed at the center, its windows boarded, its siding blackened by time. Clara stepped out, the air cold and still, carrying the faint sound of running water, a key river, just as Nora described. She approached the lodge, her boots crunching on pine needles. The door was ajar, its hinges rusted. She pushed it open, her flashlight sweeping the interior. Bare walls, dust-choked air, broken furniture scattered like bones. But what stopped her was the far wall, carved with words, deep and angry. Kimmy, Marcy, Caleb, Sam, Nora. We are still here. Clara's breath hitched. The same message as the trap door, but fresher, the wood still pale where the knife had cut. Someone had been here recently. She stepped closer, her beam catching something else. A small metal box, tucked beneath a collapsed table. She pried. It opened, revealing a stack of Polaroids bound by a rubber band. Her hands trembled as she lifted them out. The first showed a child sleeping on a mat, her face half hidden. The second showed a girl eating, her eyes vacant. The third was Kimmy, crying in a windowless room, her glasses askew. Each had a name on the back. Silence, obedience, glory. The last photo was different. A girl standing by a tree, her face turned away, a purple bracelet on her wrist. On the back, disobeyed. Clara's heart pounded. Kimmy had disobeyed, left the tape, the drawing, the bracelet. She slipped the Polaroids into an evidence bag, her mind racing. The lodge wasn't abandoned. It was a shrine, a record of control and resistance. She stepped outside, the river's murmur louder now, the fog curling through the trees. Something moved in the shadows. A branch snapping, a soft shuffle of leaves. Clara's hand went to her gun, her voice low. "Hello? Anyone there?" Silence. Then from the trees, a whisper, faint but clear. "You're not supposed to be here." Clara spun, her flashlight sweeping the woods. Nothing but fog and pines. She called again, but no answer came. The whisper lingered, childlike, cautious, a warning or a plea. Clara backed toward her truck, the Polaroids heavy in her pocket. Willow Grove wasn't just a lead. It was the heart of the mystery, and someone, or something, was still watching. The pines of Willow Grove Camp stood silent, their branches heavy with fog, as Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley backed toward her, truck, her flashlight beam slicing through the dusk of May 6, 1988. The whisper still echoed in her mind. "You're not supposed to be here." A childlike voice, faint but deliberate, from the shadows of the woods. Clara's hand hovered near her gun, her pulse thundering, but the fog swallowed any sign of movement. The abandoned lodge behind her, its walls carved with names. Kimmy, Marcy, Caleb, Sam, Nora. "We are still here," felt alive, its secrets pulsing, like a heartbeat. In her pocket, a stack of Polaroids burned, each one a snapshot of control. Children with blank faces, labeled silence, obedience, glory. The last showed Kimmy Leong, her purple bracelet visible, marked disobeyed. 12 years ago, 15 children vanished from Chowchilla on a school bus bound for Silver Creek. Now, the bus was back, unearthed with a chilling message. We never made it to Silver Creek. Nora Kelly, a survivor, spoke of a barn with wrong clocks and a man called Mr. Avery, Kimmy's bracelet, Marcy's headband, a cassette tape labeled For the Ones Who Remember, and a notebook listing the garden deepened the mystery. Clara had stumbled into the heart of it at Willow Grove, and something, or someone, was watching. Clara drove back to the Chowchilla Sheriff's Station, the fog thickening around her truck, the Polaroids heavy in her jacket. The whisper haunted her, its tone not threatening but cautious, as if testing her. She replayed Nora's words from the hospital. Some don't want to be found, they think it's home. The notebook's ledger, dove, compliant, silence, observant, glory, resistant. And Kimmy's voice on the tape, defiant and unbroken, painted a picture of a cult-like system designed to erase identities. The garden waits for those who forget. The phrase gnawed at Clara, a place where children like Marcy, who'd tried to run, were finished. She gripped the steering wheel, the road to Chowchilla a blur of grey. The children of 1976 were out there, some alive, some lost, and Willow Grove was only the beginning. At the station, Clara spread the Polaroids across her desk, their images stark under the buzzing fluorescent lights. The children's faces, Nora, Kimmy, Caleb, were frozen in moments of submission, their eyes vacant, but their postures rigid, as if posed by force. The lodge's carved names matched the trapdoors in the Avery barn, a cry for remembrance. Clara pinned the Polaroids to her whiteboard, connecting them to the notebook, the tape, and the photo from the bus, labelled The Chosen, Year 2. The bearded man in the doorway, Father Elijah, Nora had called him, loomed over it all, his shadow, stretching across 12 years. Clara's eyes drifted to the county map, the red circle around Willow Grove Camp, the river's murmur, the whistle Nora remembered at dusk tied it to the San Joaquin's Bend. But the whisper suggested someone was still there, guarding or hiding. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was the forensic lab in Fresno. Sheriff Hensley, we've got preliminary results on the notebook, the tech said. The ink's from the late 70s, but the last page, the one about the garden, was written later, maybe 82 or 83. No prints, but the paper's got traces of soil matching the Silver Creek site. Clara's pulse quickened. Anything on the tape? The cassette's degraded, but we confirmed the voice is a child's, female, likely 10 to 12 years old. No background noise, just her voice. We're working on the Polaroids now, but the film stock's unusual. Kodak, discontinued in 79, but the prints look fresher, like they were developed years after exposure. Clara thanked the tech and hung up, her mind racing. The notebook's final entry was recent, the Polaroids deliberately placed. Someone had returned to Willow Grove to the bus, leaving clues or warnings. She added the lab's findings to the whiteboard, circling the garden again. Nora's story of Father Elijah, the man who'd boarded the bus at Road 132, matched the photo's shadow. Mr. Avery, Sister Ruth, Father Elijah. They were pieces of a machine that had stolen 15 children and buried the truth. Clara drove to the hospital that evening, the fog, a living wall against her headlights. Nora was in her private room, sitting by the window, her green eyes fixed on the grey beyond. The yearbook photo lay on her tray, its edges worn from her touch. You're back, Nora said, her voice steadier but still fragile. I found something, Clara said, sitting beside her. She pulled the Polaroids from her jacket, keeping the most disturbing ones hidden. She showed Nora the one of Kimmy by the tree, her bracelet visible. Do you recognize this place? Nora's breath hitched, her fingers trembling as she took the photo. That's Willow Grove, she whispered. The tree by the lodge. They made us stand there sometimes to prove we were good. Her eyes filled with tears. Kimmy hated it. She'd hide her bracelet. Say it was her real name, not theirs. Clara's chest ached. What about the garden? You said they took Marcy there. Nora's face paled. It wasn't at Willow Grove. It was deeper, past the river. They'd blindfold us, drive us somewhere cold, quiet. I never went, but Marcy. She came back wrong. She stopped fighting, stopped talking. Clara leaned closer. Did anyone else go there? Nora nodded slowly. Caleb, once. He tried to break a window at the barn. They took him for a week. When he came back, he didn't smile anymore. Clara's mind flashed to the trapdoor's wall. Caleb, I'm sorry. She showed Nora the notebook's first page, the list of names: Dove, Silence, Glory. Do you know these? Nora's eyes widened. That's us. They gave us those names. I was Dove. Kimmy was Silence. Marcy was Glory. Her voice broke. They said it was to protect us, but it was to make us forget. Clara's hand rested on Nora's. You didn't forget. Neither did Kimmy. Nora clutched the photo of Kimmy, tears spilling. She's still out there. I know it. Clara left the hospital as night fell, the fog denser, swallowing the stars. She drove to the Avery barn, drawn back by the trapdoor's secrets. The barn loomed in the dark, its boards warped, its silhouette a jagged wound against the sky. She descended the ladder again, her flashlight sweeping the concrete chamber. The scratched names seemed fresher in the beam's light, their edges raw. She found a new mark, one she'd missed. Jonah, 1978. Don't let them take me. Clara's breath caught. Jonah Ellis, one of the 15, a quiet boy who loved comic books, always sketching superheroes. His name hadn't appeared in Nora's stories or the notebook, but here it was. A plea carved into the dark. She climbed out, her hands shaking, and drove to the station. The whiteboard was a labyrinth now, Jonah's name added beside the others. She cross-referenced the case file. Jonah Ellis, age 10 in 76. No family left in Chowchilla by 88. His mother had died in 80. His father moved away. Clara's eyes drifted to the map, Willow Grove's red circle glaring. The whisper in the woods, Jonah's name, the garden's shadow. It all pointed deeper, beyond the camp, to a place the children feared. The next morning, Clara received a call from the Fresno lab. The Polaroids had yielded a partial print, smudged, but viable, not matching any known records. It's fresh, the tech said. No older than a year. Clara's pulse raced. Someone had handled the photos recently, perhaps the whisperer in the woods. She requested a rush on the print analysis and headed to Willow Grove again, the fog thinning, but the air still heavy. The camp was quieter in daylight, the lodge's sagging frame less menacing, but no less haunted. Clara retraced her steps to the tree in the Polaroid, its bark scarred from years of wind and neglect. She knelt, her fingers brushing the ground, and found it. A small metal hatch, hidden beneath roots and moss, its edges rusted but intact. Her breath caught. She pried it open with her knife, revealing a narrow tunnel, its air cold and bitter, tinged with decay. Clara hesitated, her radio crackling, but she didn't call for backup. Not yet. The tunnel sloped downward, its walls reinforced with concrete, its floor slick with moisture. Her flashlight beam danced across graffiti. More names, more pleas. Marcy, 1977. Kimmy, don't stop. At the end, a steel door, locked but dented, as if someone had tried to break through. Clara knocked, her voice low. Hello? Anyone there? Silence. Then a scrape, soft but deliberate, from the other side. Clara's heart pounded. I'm Sheriff Hensley. I'm here to help. A pause, then a voice, small, raspy, unmistakably, a child's. Is it safe to speak now? Clara froze, her hand on the door. The voice was fragile, but it carried a weight of years. She forced the lock with her crowbar, the door groaning open. Inside, a small chamber, its walls bare except for a single drawing. A bus burning, children running toward a light. A figure stood in the center, thin and pale, wrapped in tattered clothes. A boy, no older than 12 in appearance, but his eyes, grey, ancient, belied his age. He clutched a notebook, its pages frayed. Who are you? Clara asked, her voice gentle. The boy hesitated, his fingers tightening on the notebook. They called me Obedience, he whispered. But my name was Jonah. Clara's breath caught. Jonah Ellis, the boy from the trapdoor's wall. She crouched, her flashlight lowered. Jonah, you're safe now. How long have you been here? He shook his head, his eyes darting to the door. I don't know. They moved us, always moving. But I stayed. I hid. They didn't find me. Who didn't find you? Clara pressed. Jonah's voice dropped to a whisper. Father Elijah, Mr. Avery, the ones who took us to the garden. Clara's stomach twisted. Where's the garden? Jonah pointed to the tunnel's ceiling, his hand trembling. Deeper. Past the river. Where the light doesn't go. Clara helped Jonah to her truck, wrapping him in a blanket, his notebook clutched to his chest. He was silent on the drive to the hospital, his eyes fixed on the fog beyond the window. At the hospital, doctors swarmed, their faces grim as they assessed his malnutrition and exposure. Clara stayed by his side, Jonah's hand gripping hers. You found Nora, he whispered. She didn't forget either. Clara nodded, her throat tight. She didn't, and neither did you. Jonah's eyes filled with tears. Kimmy's still out there. She left the tape for us. Clara's heart raced. Kimmy Leong, the girl who disobeyed, whose voice had survived on the cassette. She showed Jonah the Polaroid of Kimmy by the tree. His breath hitched. That's her. She was always writing, always fighting. Clara drove back to the station that night, Jonah's notebook on the passenger seat. She opened it at her desk, its pages filled with sketches, superheroes, buses, children holding hands. But the last page was different. A map, crude but detailed, showing a river, a ridge, and a mark labeled The Garden. Clara's pulse thundered. Jonah had given her the key, but it led to a place even he feared. The whiteboard was a tapestry of Pain Now, Nora Kelly, found 1988, survivor. Jonah Ellis, found 1988, survivor. Kimmy Leong, bracelet, tape, Polaroid, status unknown. Marcy Tate, headband, status unknown. Caleb Ruiz, name on wall, status unknown. Clara added Jonah's map, circling the garden. The fog outside pulsed, as if Chowchilla itself was watching, waiting for her to step into the dark. The fog over Chowchilla had thinned to a ghostly veil by the evening of May 7th, 1988, but the air remained heavy, as if the town itself were holding its breath. Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley sat at her desk in the sheriff's station, her hands trembling as she studied the crude map drawn by Jonah Ellis, the second survivor of the 1976 Silver Creek disappearance. 12 years ago, 15 children boarded a school bus for a field trip and vanished, leaving Chowchilla scarred. The bus, unearthed 3 days ago, held no bodies, only relics, a class list scrawled with, "We never made it to Silver Creek," a photo labeled The Chosen, Year 2, and a cassette tape with Kimmy Leong's defiant voice. Nora Kelly, found near the dig site, spoke of a barn with wrong clocks and a man called Mr. Avery. Jonah, discovered in a hidden tunnel at Willow Grove Camp, clutched a notebook with a map marking the garden, a place Nora described as cold, quiet, where children were finished. Clara's whiteboard was a web of pain. Kimmy's bracelet, Marcy's headband, Polaroids of blank-faced children, and a notebook listing cult names like Silence and Glory. The whisper in the woods, "You're all not supposed to be here," and Jonah's fear of Father Elijah pointed to a truth buried deeper than the bus. Now, Clara held the key to the garden, and it terrified her. The station was quiet, the other deputies out on patrols, leaving Clara alone with her evidence. Jonah's notebook lay open, its final page a child's sketch of a river, a ridge, and a mark labeled The Garden. The map was rough, drawn from memory, but it aligned with the San Joaquin's Bend, past Willow Grove, where a logging train's whistle once echoed at dusk. Clara's fingers traced the map, her mind replaying Jonah's words. Deeper. Past the river, where the light doesn't go. The Polaroids from Willow Grove showed Kimmy, labeled disobeyed, her bracelet, a symbol of resistance. The notebooks, ledger, silence, observant, trusted, and Kimmy's voice on the tape, pleading, "We're still here," confirmed a cult's control, a system that stripped names and memories. The garden waits for those who forget. Nora's story of Marcy returned silent from that place, and Caleb, broken after a week there, haunted Clara. She pinned Jonah's map to the whiteboard, circling the garden in red, its shadow stretching across the names. Nora Kelly, Jonah Ellis, survivors, Kimmy Leong, Marcy Tate, Caleb Ruiz, status unknown. Clara's phone rang, the sound sharp in the silence. It was the Fresno lab. "Sheriff, we've got results on the Polaroid print," the tech said. "It's a partial, but it matches a record. From '83, a Martin Avery arrested for trespassing near a defunct youth camp in Madera County. No conviction, case dropped." Clara's pulse raced. Martin Avery, son of Frank Avery, whose barn held the trapdoor with scratch names. "Anything else?" "The soil on the notebook's last page," the tech continued. "It's got traces of limestone, unique to a sinkhole region north of Willow Grove. We're cross-referencing now, but it's remote." Clara thanked the tech and hung up, her eyes fixed on the map. Limestone sinkholes dotted the San Joaquin's northern edge, a maze of caves and hollows where anything could hide. She added Martin Avery's name to the whiteboard, connecting it to the barn, Willow Grove, and the garden. Father Elijah, the bearded man in the photo, and Sister Ruth, who'd vanished early, were ghosts. But Avery was real, a thread she could pull. She grabbed her jacket and flashlight, the map folded, in her pocket. The garden was out there, and she couldn't wait for daylight. The drive to Willow Grove was a descent into darkness, the fog curling like smoke around her truck. The road narrowed, gravel crunching under tires, the pines closing in. Clara's headlights caught a faded sign, Willow Grove Youth Retreat, private land, its letters peeling like old skin. She parked at the camp's edge, the lodge's sagging frame barely visible in the mist. The river's murmur was louder now, a constant whisper that matched the one in the woods. Clara stepped out, her boots sinking into pine needles, Jonah's map guiding her past the lodge, toward the ridge. The trail was overgrown, thorns snagging her jacket, the air cold and damp. She crossed the river at a shallow bend, the water icy against her boots, and climbed the ridge, her flashlight sweeping the ground. Jonah's map marked 3 stone trees, petrified trunks, relics of a forgotten forest, and a stream that split but never rejoined. Clara found the trees, their bark grey and hard, clustered on the ridge's crest. Below, the stream forked, one branch vanishing into a limestone hollow. Her beam caught a depression in the ground, circular, covered in moss. She knelt, brushing it clear, and found it. A steel hatch, its edges rusted, engraved with TS2. Transfer Station 2. Clara's breath caught. Transfer Station. The words implied movement, a network. She pried the hatch open with her crowbar, the hinges screaming. Cold air rushed out, bitter with mildew and metal. The shaft descended steeply, reinforced with concrete, its ladder slick with moisture. Clara hesitated, her radio crackling, but she didn't call for backup. The children deserved her courage, not her caution. She climbed down, each rung a step into the unknown. The tunnel leveled into a corridor, its walls damp, scrawled with more names. Kimmy, 1978. Marcy, don't give up. Clara's flashlight trembled, the beam catching a door at the end, steel and dented, its lock broken. She pushed it open, the air inside colder, heavier. The chamber was large, its ceiling domed, its walls lined with small desks. 15, arranged in a circle, each with a nameplate. Nora, Kimmy, Marcy, Caleb, Jonah. In the center, under a cracked glass dome, was a locked case. Clara broke the glass, her gloves crunching, and lifted out a book, its cover black leather, titled The Final Curriculum. She opened it, her hands unsteady, pages of typed lessons, handwritten notes, margins scrawled with mania. Obedience is safety, memory is danger, the past is infection, the future is correction. Each page grew darker, names repeated. Glory, disciplined. Silence, trusted. Dove, compliant. One name stood out, crossed out, then rewritten. Cassia. The final page read, Cassia saw room 6. Cassia ran. Room 6 is sealed. Clara's stomach twisted. Room 6. She scanned the chamber, finding a false wall, its edges uneven. She radioed the station, requesting a team to Willow Grove. Her voice, steady despite her fear. Possible hidden chamber, she said. I need tools now. While waiting, Clara explored the tunnel's branches, finding bunk rooms, crates of moldy clothes, and a wall of photos. Children in uniforms, kneeling, standing in rows, their faces blank. One photo showed a girl, older than the others, her eyes sharp, a red ribbon in her hair. On the back, Cassia, year 3, disobeyed. Clara's breath hitched. Cassia, like Kimmy, had fought back. The team arrived, their tools breaking through the false wall. Room 6 was a void, its air thick with decay. The walls were covered in a mural, painted by hand. A girl running through trees, arms outstretched, light above. Below, in red paint, Cassia remembered. She left the light on. Clara's flashlight swept the floor, finding a notebook, its pages filled with code, numbers, shapes, dates. She recognized Kimmy's handwriting, the same as the trapdoor's scratches. The last entry read, If you find this, don't just take us back. Take us forward. Help us be real again. Clara's radio crackled. Sheriff, we've got a hit on Martin Avery, a deputy said. Last seen in '86, living in a trailer near the San Joaquin. Address is 10 miles north. Clara drove to the trailer that night, the fog a wall against her headlights. The trailer sat in a gravel lot, its door rusted, a single bulb flickering above. She knocked, her hand on her gun. A voice answered, low and calm. I knew you'd come. The door opened, revealing a man in his 40s, grey at the temples, eyes sharp but weary. Martin Avery? Clara asked. He nodded, stepping aside. You're here about the kids. Inside, the trailer was sparse, a chessboard on a table, books on psychology and memory lining the walls. I was young, Avery said, sitting slowly. My father Frank ran the barn. Elijah was the leader, the one with the vision. They called it salvation, but it was control. Clara's pulse raced. Where's the garden? Avery's eyes darkened. North, past the sinkholes. A bunker, hidden in a cave. They took the kids there to break them. I left in '80, couldn't stomach it anymore. Why didn't you come forward? Clara asked, her voice hard. Avery looked away, fear. They said the world wouldn't believe us, and I helped them at first. I was one of them. Clara showed him the mural photo from room 6. Avery's breath caught. That's Cassia. She was different, older. She saw what they did in the garden and ran. I thought she was dead. Clara's mind flashed to the notebook's code. Cassia's name. Is she alive? Avery hesitated. I don't know. But if anyone could survive, it's her. Clara left the trailer, Avery's words heavy. A bunker, hidden in a cave. She drove to the hospital, showing Jonah the mural photo. His eyes widened. That's her, he whispered. Cassia. She helped Kimmy hide the tape. Clara's heart raced. Cassia was the key, a witness who'd fought back. She returned to the station, decoding Kimmy's notebook with a cipher from the case file. It revealed coordinates, pointing to a sinkhole north of Willow Grove. Clara marked it on the map, her hands shaking. The garden was real, and Cassia might still be out there, leaving the light on. The fog over Chowchilla had burned away by the dawn of May 8, 1988, leaving a sky heavy with clouds, as if the town were bracing for judgment. Deputy Sheriff Clara Hensley stood at her whiteboard in the sheriff's station, her hands stained with ink from decoding Kimmy Leong's notebook. 12 years ago, 15 children vanished on a school bus bound for Silver Creek, leaving Chowchilla, haunted. The bus, unearthed 5 days ago, held relics. A class list scrawled with "We never made it to Silver Creek," a photo labeled "The Chosen, Year 2, and a cassette tape with Kimmy's voice. Survivors. Nora Kelly and Jonah Ellis spoke of a barn with wrong clocks, a man called Mr. Avery, and a place called The Garden. Clara's evidence, Kimmy's bracelet, Marcy's headband, Polaroids, a cult ledger, and a mural in room 6, revealed a system designed to erase identities. Martin Avery's confession pointed to a bunker north of Willow Grove, hidden in a limestone sinkhole. Kimmy's decoded notebook gave coordinates, and Cassia, a girl who'd run after seeing the garden, was the final key. Clara knew today was her last chance to find the truth, to bring the children home, or bury their ghosts forever. The station buzzed with quiet urgency, deputies preparing for a raid on the sinkhole. Clara's whiteboard was a tapestry of pain. Nora Kelly, Jonah Ellis, survivors. Kimmy Leong, Marcy Tate, Caleb Ruiz, status unknown. Cassia, disobeyed, missing. She packed her gear, flashlight, crowbar, Kimmy's notebook, the mural photo of Cassia running toward light. The coordinates pointed to a remote hollow, 12 miles north of Willow Grove, where limestone caves swallowed rivers and secrets. Martin Avery's words echoed. A bunker, hidden in a cave. They took the kids there to break them. Clara's pulse raced as she loaded her truck, the map marked with a red X. The garden waited, and Cassia had left the light on. The drive was silent, the San Joaquin Valley a blur of pines and fog. Clara's team, 4 deputies, a forensic tech, and a paramedic, followed in a van, their faces grim. The road ended at a gravel trail, forcing them to hike the final mile. The air grew colder, the ground uneven, limestone outcrops jutting like bones. Clara led, Jonah's map guiding her to a sinkhole, its edges cloaked in moss. A steel hatch, rusted but intact, was hidden beneath vines, engraved with TS3. Final station. Her breath caught. Transfer Station 3, the cult's network was vast, a labyrinth built to hide its sins. Clara pried the hatch open, the hinges groaning. Cold air rushed out, thick with earth and decay. The shaft descended into darkness, a ladder slick with moisture. She radioed the team, her voice steady. Stay close, we don't know what's down there. Her flashlight swept the tunnel, its walls scrawled with familiar names. Kimmy, 1979. Marcy, we're still here. The words were fresher, the ink barely faded, as if written yesterday. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling a dome of limestone, stalactites dripping like teeth. Steel doors lined the walls, each marked with a number. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. Clara's beam caught a central altar, carved from stone, surrounded by 15 chairs, each with a nameplate. Dove, silence, glory, obedience. The air was heavy, charged with the weight of years. A book rested on the altar, its cover black leather, identical to the final curriculum from Willow Grove. Clara opened it, her gloved hands trembling. New pages, typed and scrawled. The garden is eternal. Memory is the enemy. Cassia failed. Silence persists. Clara's stomach twisted. Silence persists. Kimmy, labeled Silence, was still fighting. She signaled the team to fan out, checking the doors. Room 1 was a dormitory, bunk beds rusted, Blankets, moldy. Room 2 held crates of clothes, books on obedience, and a projector with a reel labeled, Lessons for the Chosen. Room 3 was locked, its door dented, scratches around the frame. Clara's crowbar broke the lock, the door creaking open. Inside, a small figure sat on a cot, her back to the door, her hair dark and matted. She turned, her glasses glinting, a purple bracelet on her wrist. "Kimmy," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. The girl nodded, her eyes sharp, but weary. "You found the tape," she said, her voice soft but clear, matching the cassette's defiance. "I knew someone would." Clara knelt, tears burning. "You're safe now. We're getting you out." Kimmy clutched a notebook, its pages filled with drawings, dinosaurs, buses, children holding hands. "They didn't want us to remember," she said. "But I did. For Marcy. For Caleb." Clara's heart raced. "Where are they?" Kimmy pointed to the wall, a hidden panel scrawled with room 4. The team broke through, finding a second chamber, colder, darker. Marcy Tate sat on the floor, her eyes vacant, a star-stitched headband in loose in her hair. Caleb Ruiz leaned against the wall, his face gaunt, his fingers tracing invisible lines. They were alive, but broken, their spirits dimmed by the garden's weight. The paramedic rushed in, wrapping them in blankets, their eyes blinking against the light. Clara helped Kimmy to her feet, her notebook heavy in her hands. "Cassia," Kimmy whispered. "She showed me how to hide the tape. She ran, but they caught her." Clara showed Kimmy the mural photo from room 6. Kimmy's breath hitched. "That's her." She said to leave the light on for the others. The team searched the remaining rooms, finding records, ledgers, photos, tapes, detailing the cult's work. Father Elijah, revealed as Elias Thorne, a drifter turned prophet, had died in 84, his vision carried on by followers. Sister Ruth had vanished in 77, likely dead. Martin Avery's role was minor, a pawn who fled. The garden was a bunker, a final stage to erase the children's pasts, preparing them for a new world. But Cassia, an older girl brought in later, had disrupted it, teaching Kimmy to resist, leaving clues before her capture. Clara's radio crackled. "Sheriff, we've got movement outside," a deputy said. She led Kimmy, Marcy, and Caleb to the surface, the team guarding them. In the sinkhole's rim, a figure stood, tall and thin, her hair tied with a red ribbon. Clara's breath caught. "Cassia," the woman nodded, her eyes fierce. "I've been watching," she said, "waiting for someone to find them." Cassia explained. She'd escaped in 79, hiding in the valley, leaving clues. The Polaroids, the notebook's last page, hoping to expose the garden. She'd tracked the cult's remnants, now scattered, their bunker abandoned, but guarded by fear. Clara's team arrested a lone watcher, an aging follower, near the sinkhole, his ramblings confirming Cassia's story. At the hospital, Nora and Jonah embraced Kimmy, Marcy, and Caleb, tears flowing. The children were frail, their minds scarred, but alive. Cassia stayed, her identity confirmed as Sarah Voss, taken in 74, older than the others, her defiance saving them. Clara's whiteboard was retired, the evidence sent to Fresno for prosecution. The cult's network, 3 bunkers, dozens of followers, was dismantled, its leaders dead or fled. Chowchilla began to heal, the children's return a bittersweet miracle. Clara visited them, Kimmy's notebook now filled with new drawings, trees, stars, her mother's face. Marcy spoke again, softly. Caleb smiled faintly. Nora and Jonah rebuilt their lives, their memories sharp. Cassia left Chowchilla, her mission done. Her red ribbon a symbol of resistance. Clara stood by the Silver Creek bus, now a memorial. Its yellow paint faded but unbroken. The fog was gone, the valley bright. She touched the class list. It's red, scrawl, silent. The children were home, their names real again. Cassia had left the light on, and Clara had followed it, bringing them forward as Kimmy had asked. The garden was empty, its secrets laid bare, and Chowchilla could finally breathe.